Hi everyone, welcome to Mount Panorama Bathurst as the Heritage Touring Cars get set for their third race of the weekend as part of the Hi-Tec Oils Bathurst 6 Hour. And as the cars head out onto the track, we're just going to take a look back on some of the action from last year's Australian Muscle Car Masters from Sydney Motorsport Park.
So we have the Group A and Group C machines, so the spread from 1973 right up to 1992.
Just incredible when you look at how bare the dash were. You know, the steering wheel, there was just no telemetry, no technology at all on the dash, the steering wheel. None of that was even heard of back in the day, Luke.
Yeah, certainly in the Escort there, but I tell you what, plenty of telemetry when we get to the front of the field in the Nissan GTR. So the Escort in the same race as the Group A GTR Godzilla.
And John Bower was doing, well, several different drives throughout the course of the weekend. So we see the 77 car, the TTA Heritage entry of John Abbott, the Toyota Supra. That looks cool.
Yeah, ex-Peter Williamson machine and very special mobile that John Bower is behind the wheel of, and that is the Volvo from 30 years ago, back on the track.
Start too as well. Tony Alford, the Nissan GTR R32, leads him down into turn one. And man, this covers so many great cars, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the early cars, the Group C machines, the more basic cars, that's the earlier era, and the more modern era at the front of the field, the first three cars at least, Group A.
Kerry McMahon just then reminds me of the Tony Longhurst style Sierra situation back then as we go on board with Gary Kerwin in the VL Holden Commodore. This is Shannon's Share the Passion, your Heritage Touring Cars, Group A and C combined.
Great to see the RX-7 out there too. And the XD Ford, Skyline, a bit smoky, so big variety of cars there. David Toe in the BMW M3. So he's putting the pressure on the Keem-driven ex-Laurie Nelson Mustang. So two Group A cars and Jim Richards behind them in the 635.
It's remarkable when you just think about the names as well as you think about the cars, when you see body shapes like that, when you think back to even guys like the late great Greg Hansford, who was pretty handy in an RX-7 as well. On board with John Bower, the Mark Petch Motorsport entry, and Bowie looking pretty casual in the Volvo then.
Yeah, he's had some problems with this car. It's its first meeting in Australia in 30 years. He drove this car in the endurance races back in 1986. They've got a turbo boost problem in that car that they haven't been able to fix. So it's just something John Bower's dealing with. Here's a replay of the start.
We just saw Tony Pallas there in the Jag. And here, as you said, good start for the Nissan. It's always going to be a rocket off the line. Would you say that Scaife was probably the most famous of the Godzilla cars back in the day?
Well, I guess with his teammate Jim Richards, definitely. Ed Singleton, this is a magic machine. He's aboard Elvis.
Oh, but look at the straight line speed. Up the inside, fair old sort of a start. There's a name, John Goss. Had the pleasure of meeting that man, thanks to you actually, at Oran Park Raceway back in the day.
Replay of Jim Richards getting ahead of Greg Keem. The Keems from Gunnedah in northern New South Wales.
You're watching the Australian Muscle Car Masters from Sydney Motorsport Park and Shannon's Share the Passion, bringing you the Heritage Touring Cars Group A and Group C combined. And this is a good little battle Kerwin's going to come up on right now.
Yeah, Kerwin aboard the ex-Gerald K Jag parts Commodore, and Gerald K, he was a stalwart of the Group A scene in Commodores right through the 80s and early 90s.
I just love the sound. Just listen to this thing working the gears. You have to be really careful through this section. You can't just rail it like the Minis were earlier in the day. They don't quite stick like this. This is a really good battle now.
So Peter Ingram in the Lazy Maze Mazda RX-7. As I said, fantastic to see the RX-7 out there. There's not too many survivors from the Group C era because most of them were turned into sports sedans, I should say, once the Group C category came to an end at the end of 1984. So a couple of survivors, and fantastic to see that machine on track.
I'd love to see Ryan Hansford drive an RX-7 one day like his dad did. Of course, Ryan has gone on to some great things in the V8 Ute side of things. He's a pretty handy wheeler, just like his dad. It'd be really cool to see him drive on one day. Meanwhile, the Esky is looking pretty racy right now.
Yeah, that's Justin Matthews, and he's putting the pressure on Jamie McDonald in the ex-Steve Masterton Commodore.
Bob Holden Motors, another just iconic name in Australian touring car racing. Fans really enjoying this class. I think everybody relates to it in some way. Look at the Escort up the inside. Not quite going to do it in a straight line, but in terms of nimbleness, the Escort's going to have it all over the Holden.
Yeah, actually Bob is in this field. I think that might be him there at top left of the screen in the Corolla. Meantime, back up front, and it's all Tony Alford. In the ex-Mark Gibbs, Bob Forbes entered GIO Nissan GTR, and he is streaking away from the field. And he's got a collection of these Nissan Group A and Group C cars, and this is the one, most of the museum pieces, this is the one he chooses to race.
Normally you'd see Tony in something that's bright pink if you follow any sort of history with Tony's racing over the years for the Donut King side of things. Good drive, just drove away right off the front of the grid and never really got anywhere near the rest of the field, just drove away. Norman Mogg, Normie doing a great job, and we're wrapping up this race which has been exceptionally well received by the fans. Great sounds, great looking cars, and Kerwin's done a good job here.
He has indeed, and doesn't quite have enough there to pip Norm Mogg at the post.
So good racing, and your results for Group C and A combined. Tony Alford getting the win from Kerry McMahon, David Toe, Jim Richards, Greg Keem, Axiak in the 6th position, Normie Mogg, Gary Kerwin, Peter Ingram and John Mina, your top 10.
So we're just about set for a start here for race 3 of the Heritage Touring Cars. We're on board with David Toe in his ex-Jim Richards BMW M3 as they head up to Hell Corner for the first of 6 laps. It's Chris Stillwell that leads the field in his ex-Dick Johnson Ford Sierra as they head up Mountain Straight. And we now head over to our commentators, Brian van der Wacker, Benny Hope and Gary O'Brien. Boys, it's over to you.
Well, this has been very exciting to see all weekend. Brian van der Wacker, of course, the Sierras, and it's a bit unfortunate that we can't see the second of the Sierras that were entered, which was actually a Tony Longhurst Sierra, but my goodness, though, it's going to be great to see him. Charlie O'Brien, very good morning to you, sir.
Charlie O'Brien, he's living in New Zealand somewhere
Charlie
at the
O'Brien,
moment.
Gary O'Brien.
Charlie O'Brien did race here on numerous occasions, and we've got the Group C and Group A cars out for their third and final race for the weekend. There have been some interesting machinery out there. Chris Stillwell leading the way, as you mentioned, Benny. It's just unfortunate that we lost Kerry McMahon out of the first race with an engine issue. Apparently it runs 2 electric fuel pumps. One of them died and it leaned out and unfortunately out of the race. But since then we've had some good racing down the field. The good thing about this category is the fact that these cars, most of them raced here. And Richard alluded to that before, but at the moment it's Chris Stillwell out in front, David Hulk in 2nd position, and David Tao in 3rd position. So we've got a Ford Sierra leading the way, a Group A car. Now Group A represents a period from 1985 to 1992. Group C, of course, is a 1973 through to 1984 period. And you can usually tell the Group C Commodores from the Group A ones by the fact that they have that large duck-tailed rear spoiler on them, and of course there's some great cars there associated with some great names of the past, the likes of Peter Jensen, Alan Grice, Peter Brock, Dick Johnson, John Bauer, Tony Longhurst that was mentioned already. And as they head down the straight the first time, you can actually see an Alan Grice car, the Roadways car from 1983, which he shared with Steve Harrington. That car was nicknamed Elvis because it had so many hits, and that was about the last configuration it ran in. But at the moment it's leading a Group A BMW, and behind that is the extra Alan Jones Warren Cullen car, which came here in the early 1980s.
Now, of course, there's strict rules on how the cars are presented for this category.
They have to be as they ran in the day, down to what engine, what sort of carburation and fuel induction they had, exhaust, wheels, gearboxes, you name it. And it's done through what they call a Certificate of Description, or COD for short. And David Hulk is actually the technical commissioner for the category, so he knows just about everything there is to know about these cars. His car, incidentally, that's the GIO Commodore you see out there. It was the last car that Kevin Bartlett raced here, and he was teamed up with a young fellow having his first start here that year, and that was Russell Ingall.
Just a young Russell Ingall, probably.
That was 1990, 91, was it? Around about that era. But at the moment, we've got a good dice going on there between the ex-Peter Jansen Commodore, and one of the ex-JPS BMWs. There's quite a few of the M3 type BMWs out there this weekend. Another one a little further back is an ex-Jim Richards car, but it's in mobile colours. It's when, of course, he was teamed up with the late great Peter Brock in the late 80s, and of course that car he ran through the entire Australian Touring Car Championship in I think about 1988.
Well, certainly some of these cars are just looking absolutely amazing as they go across the top of the mountain, and we've been blessed with some beautiful weather, and it's going to make some great pictures, which of course you can go to bathurst6hour.com.au.
These races this morning, Gary, they're short, sharp and sweet, but they come across to you so quickly. I mean, you sort of feel like it's over and done within 2 seconds flat.
You barely get through the field and all of a sudden checkered flags out.
Car 6, Edward Singleton, that's a well-presented car. It looks amazing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it had a big accident down at the Australian Grand Prix when they were a support category a couple of years ago. But Ed's also got an XC Falcon, and he's also got a little Corolla as well. So he's running a gamut of all sorts of different cars. At the moment, we've got Milton Seraphis in 4th spot in that ex-Peter Jansen car. Behind him, Harrison Jones. Then we've got Ed Singleton in the Roadways one we spoke about. Bill Cutler, Jeremy Trembath. It's the next one for Jeffrey Trembath, I should say. Gregory Keane, who is in the ex-Laurie Nelson Ford Mustang. Very early Group A car. There was some talk that they may have tried to develop a Falcon back in that era. Dick Johnson raced one, shared one over in New Zealand, but they decided they'd go with a Zac Speed Ford Mustang instead, and of course that was only replaced when, of course, the Ford Sierras came along and lifted the whole ball game so dramatically until the culmination of Group A was, of course, when the Nissan Skyline sort of come into a world of their own. As they head up through the cutting towards the top of the mountain, and this car is actually one of the later Walkinshaw cars. It runs the 6-speed Hollinger gearbox. A lot of the cars run the 5-speed Getrag, and it has a slide body engine, and the later Perkins developed pieces, which was the mainstay of the Holden runners, basically, apart from Walkinshaw Group.
And Gary, of course, running true to the livery of the cars and the speed of the cars, this would have been what would have been happening back in the day. Christopher Stillwell's got a 15-second gap to David Hulk, and then back further is only a 1-second gap to David Toe. But yeah, this is exactly what happened back in the day.
Yeah, the only way that the Holdens really got into the act, I guess, is through their reliability. You could run them hard all day, whereas the Fords might have been a little bit fickle, particularly if it got a little bit hot and their turbo sort of what's a better way of putting it, detonated.
Yeah, well, that's true, especially on those hot days. And we did have a couple after those rainy events here at Mount Panorama for the 1000, 87 being the famous example, 92 being a famous example, but 88, 89, 90, they were quite hot days up here at Mount Panorama.
Yeah, well, I can remember one of them in the early mid-80s that Brock had to actually pit, and they threw ice down the back of his race suit just so he could cool off a bit. No cool suits or anything like that in those days. Still this good dice going on between Milton Seferis and Bill Cutler, both out of Victoria, and very different styles of cars. As we see Chris Stillwell come past us. He's just completed his 3rd lap. They'll be halfway through this event now. David Holt goes through, David Tao, all Group A spec cars, as is the 4th car coming through, another of the JPS cars, and they look good with their black and gold livery. The first of the Group C cars is Seraphis, and the second of them, of course, is Ed Singleton just going through now. But the beauty about this period of racing, it's a little bit like we're going to see with the 6 hour. You've got big cars, small cars, you've got lots of dicing, particularly amongst the Group C Ford Escorts at the back of the field. In the first race, 3 of them ran line astern of each other for most of the race.
So here's the replay now of that passing move at Hancock Corner.
That's Greg Keane in that Ford Mustang. And we've come back to look at cars coming up the mountain.
Here's the ex-Gricey car.
A9X Tiranas, one of the better looking Holdens you'll ever see. Certainly popular in the day. And made up quite a number of the cars. I think one year here in about 78, if my memory serves me right. There was about 3 Fords in the field, and everything else in the outright contention was basically an A9X Tirana, very popular at the time. Other cars to look at here, there's the Palace Jaguar that's just gone past us. There's a Starion out there running around that was in the early era of Group A. Nissan Skylines, of course. And speaking of which, Tony Alford was racing his Skyline here. Unfortunately, had a bit of an overheating drama, and he decided to park it. They replaced the radiator in it last night. It's an ex-Mark Scaife car. And they were hoping to take the field this morning. We haven't spotted it yet. There's the Alpha, Ignis Bridges Alpha, the Colin Bond ran back in the early days of Group A as well. I think his teammate at the time would have been one Alan Jones, the ex-Formula One world champion of 1980. And very tight coming across between these three. We've got an A9X Tirana followed by a Nissan Skyline, and in the back of that the Alfa Romeo GTV.
That's a great little nose-to-tail dice here as they head on down now to Forest's Elbow. Oh, here's the move on in the chase right now.
That'll be Singleton going through, chasing Butler through as they come down to complete their 4th lap. And I think you'll find too that David Hulk is closing on Chris Stewart. I was going to call him Michael Stewart then.
Well, for the weekend, actually, when he came across the control line about a lap ago, it looked like he just wasn't actually pushing it too much. So
I think, these cars, they're getting on in their life, and they don't want to break them. And another change goes, and take the lead away from me, I'll get it back. And that's exactly what's happened there with Bill Cutler just in front of that drive. Now, Duncan McKellar's the one in the BMW that's been doing the passing and being passed. That car crashed in the first race up at turn 2. They managed to make repairs to it, and he's coming back through the field. He was actually running 3rd, or he qualified 3rd, so that is a quick car. It just doesn't have the straight line power of a 5-litre Holden Commodore V8, but certainly very nimble around the rest of the track, and he's managed to make a liar out of me by actually showing more power in probably the biggest and hardest climb part of the circuit, i.e. going up through the cutting.
Yeah, Edward Singleton there was the meat and the sandwich there, but has now just been overtaken. So it was BMW Commodore BMW, it's now BMW Commodore, as they head across the top of the mountain.
Also Ford Caprice here, ex-Seaton Don Smith car going past us. There's an ex-Peter Williamson Toyota Supra. As this dice continues, it's well worth watching this. The 2 BMWs and the earlier model Holden Commodore going down through the dipper at the moment and heading down towards Forest Elbow. On their 5th lap, there'll only be one to go after that. And we'll bid farewell to these cars. As I said, most of these cars ran here, so it's not just the monetary value of these cars, it's the legacy that they bring when they come to Mount Panorama, because you associate it with the particular years that they raced here.
Well, that gap has just managed to widen out there. I thought the Commodore would have the legs to get up on to the back of that BMW train as they come into the right-hander of the chase right now. And he's too far back unless he's going to... No.
Not close enough on that occasion, but...
and not worth the bingo.
No, that's right. And of course, not all the cars that you see in this category are raced here, but most of them have. And we're looking at a couple of cars that probably raced in Europe. And of course, when the M3 BMW first came online in 1987, they finished 1, 2, 3, 4 at the first round of the World Touring Car Championship at Monza, but were subsequently excluded. And as a result, John Harvey and Alan Moffat were given the win. We just see another of the BMW M3s go past ahead of another Grice car, this being the Craven Mild Tirana A9X. And still, now we're just seeing Weber. We will get a change for what is effectively position 5 with McKellar coming up on the back of Seraphis. Of course, McKellar's got also has a Sierra, or he has a Sierra, and you've seen him at the wheel of a 8-litre McLaren, so this will be fairly mundane compared to one of those things.
Well, that's exactly right. Final lap here now for the Heritage Touring cars, and Christopher Stillwell has been pretty much leading this whole category every single race we've had across here all weekend.
He has been fairly dominant since we lost Kerry McMahon in the first race in the ex-Longhurst car, the last of the cars built by Frank Gardner for the B&H team in that era. And of course, this particular car that's leading the way down Conrod Straight for the last time. Chris Stillwell leads not far ahead of David Hulk. Actually, he has closed that gap, but I don't think it's going to be enough to worry our race leader. So he comes down through the chase for the final time and will make his way to the finish line. So a bit of history here with the Shell Ford Sierra again at the front of the field, coming down into Hancock Murray's corner for the last time. Put your hands together. Chris Stillwell, he's been a winner all weekend and wins another one. David Holt comes home second. That's his third second for the weekend. And David Tao will go home with a string of third places, not far ahead of a very similar looking car in fourth spot in
Harrison Jones.
Harrison Jones driving. And this dice has continued all the way through, but has been resolved in favour of the M3 as it takes the checkered flag. Ahead of Seraphis, Bill Cutler the next one through, followed by Keane, who's caught him up. Singleton comes through as well, and then we have the ex-Cullen Jones Commodore come across the line. So it's been entertaining, and as we said, lots of dices down the field, and they certainly brings back memories for those who like to see the old cars run around. Of course, if you really want to see the old cars, just go over to the museum and have a good look through that. That covers a lot of history of Mount Panorama and the racing that's happened here. There's still more dicing going on down the field and battling for well outside the top 10, but still entertaining. And it's not about winning completely all the time. It's about having a bit of fun and showcasing these great cars.
Yeah, well, this dice going right to the end into Hancock Corner here at Mount Panorama as they come across to greet the checkered flag. And just before they're in the chase, Graham Taylor had a couple of wheels off there in the dirt as well, a bit of pressure coming through the last turn of the chase, but that is all done. But my goodness, it's great to have seen these motor vehicles racing around Mount Panorama once again. Of course, the field does grow and shrinks with every meeting that they go to, but we've been lucky to check out some of these wonderful machines here this weekend as we just wait for more of the field to pour through Hancock Murray's corner there now. Oh, the Marston Holmes Commodore.
First, one of the early Group A built Commodores, of course, Steve Marston and Rent Falcons in Group C, and of course, with the transition, I wanted to keep the Aussie flavour, and the only Aussie car being developed for the international formula at that period of time was Commodore, so I guess that's the reason to go for. And one of the earliest Group C cars is that blue Tirana XU1 coming down to the checkered flag. Now, Tiranas ran here in series production, but in 1973, when Group C started, the weapon of choice for anyone who wanted to run a General Motors product was the Tirana.
Okay, so let's go through our top 10 for the Heritage Touring cars. Christopher Stillwell in the Ford Sierra RS500 takes out the win. David Hulk in second in the Holden Commodore VL. David Toe in the BMW M3 in third. Harrison Jones fourth, also in an M3. Duncan McKellar in 5 with the BMW M3 E30. Then Milton Seferis in the Commodore. Bill Cutler in 6. Gregory Keem in 8th. 9th was Edward Singleton. And rounding up the top 10, Jeffrey Chembath in the Holden Commodore VC.
So well done to Chris Stillwell. He's your victor in race 3 of the Heritage Touring cars here at Mount Panorama as part of the Hi-Tec Oils Bathurst 6 Hour. We hope you enjoyed all the action. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.